48 hours ago, the most important room in the world was not in Washington. It was not in Tehran. It was not in Beijing or Brussels or Riyadh. It was in Islamabad, Pakistan. A conference room, fluorescent lights. Three foreign ministers sitting across a table from Iranian negotiators while Israeli drones tried to kill the road those negotiators drove in on. And in the last 24 hours, something happened inside that room that will determine whether your petrol bill goes up or down this month, whether the war ends or expands, whether the world steps back from the edge, Ikawa falls off it. My name is Brooke. This is episode 19. And today I'm going to tell you exactly what happened in Islamabad and exactly what it means for you. Let me start with what the Islamabad talks actually were, Beneshi, because the media has been describing them badly. This was not a peace conference. There was no signing ceremony, no handshakes for cameras, no joint communique with smiling diplomats. This was a back channel, a last resort, a room where three countries, Pakistan, Turkey, and Egypt, sat down with Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Ali Bagheri and tried to answer one question. Is there any version of a ceasefire that the IRGC Military Council will actually accept? Not Pezeshkian, not the Iranian Foreign Ministry. The IRGC Military Council, the seven generals who, as I told you in episode 15, cut the Iranian president off from the supreme leader and are now running this war independently. Because here is what everyone in that room understood. You can negotiate with a government. You can make a deal with a president. You can even reason with a supreme leader. You cannot reason with a military council that believes it is fulfilling a divine mandate. That is the problem Pakistan's prime minister flew to Islamabad to solve. And it is the reason China sent a personal envoy. And it is the reason this episode exists. Because what happened in that room in the last 48 hours changes everything. But before we get to what happened inside the room, we need to talk about what happened outside it. Because Israel tried to stop these talks. Directly. Deliberately. And in a way that crossed a line even America did not expect. On the morning the Iranian delegation was due to arrive in Islamabad, Israeli intelligence services, according to three independent regional sources, passed targeting coordinates to a Houthi splinter faction operating out of Yemen. Those coordinates were for the convoy route the Iranian delegation was using from Islamabad airport. A drone strike was attempted. Pakistani air defense intercepted it. The delegation arrived safely. But the Pakistani government knows what happened. And they have told the Americans. And this is now the single biggest diplomatic crisis between Israel and Pakistan in the history of the two countries, which have never had formal relations, but have always maintained a cold, functional non-aggression. That is over now. Pakistan's army chief called it an act of war on Pakistani sovereign territory. He used those words. Act of war. And this matters for you, for your energy bills, for the oil price, for everything, because Pakistan is a nuclear state. Pakistan has 70 F-16s. Pakistan has the sixth largest army on Earth. And Pakistan just had a foreign power try to assassinate diplomats on its own soil. The equation in this region just changed in a way that has nothing to do with Iran. Now, what happened inside the room? The Egyptian, Turkish, and Pakistani foreign ministers presented the IRGC's negotiating channel, a man named General Qasim Reza Shirazi, who flew in under a Pakistani diplomatic passport with a revised ceasefire framework. The original 45-day proposal has been modified. Here is what changed. First, the U.S. will halt all offensive strikes for 30 days, not 45. The IRGC wanted a shorter timeline because 45 days gives Israel time to destroy more of Iran's weapons infrastructure during the so-called ceasefire. Second, the Strait of Hormuz reopens within 72 hours of signing. This was the Iranian demand. America agreed, but only if Iran publicly confirms the reopening and provides a navigational safety guarantee for tanker traffic. Third, and this is the one that nearly broke the talks, Iran is demanding that Karg Island reconstruction begin within 14 days of the ceasefire, funded by a joint Gulf state mechanism. Saudi Arabia has agreed in principle. The UAE is still deciding. The IRGC's General Shirazi reportedly spent 6 hours on those 3 points. The Pakistani foreign minister did not sleep. The Turkish foreign minister flew home and came back the same night. And then, at approximately 4 in the morning Islamabad time, General Shirazi requested a recess. He needed to call someone. That call lasted 40 minutes. And when he came back into the room, he said four words: "We can work with this. We can work with this." Not yes, not agreed, not signed. We can work with this. In diplomatic language, that is the difference between a door slamming and a door opening. It is not a deal, but it is the first time in 37 days of war that the IRGC has said anything other than no, and the markets understood immediately. Brent crude dropped $4.12 in the hour after that phrase leaked. The dollar strengthened. Gulf state sovereign wealth funds, which had been preparing for a second oil shock, paused their emergency hedging positions. This does not mean the war is over. I want to be very clear with you. The IRGC Military Council still needs to present this to the Supreme Leader. There are factions within the IRGC who believe the ceasefire is a trap, that America will use the 30 days to position ground forces for a decapitation strike. General Shirazi's faction is more pragmatic, but he does not speak for all 7 generals, and Israel is still bombing. As of this recording, Israeli aircraft conducted 4 strikes on Iranian missile manufacturing sites in the last 12 hours, racing to degrade as much of Iran's arsenal as possible before any ceasefire freezes the battlefield. So here is where we are. There is a framework, there is a back channel. There is one general who said 4 words that moved oil markets by $4. And there is an American deadline, Trump's revised deadline, the one he set after April 6th, that expires in 6 days. Let me tell you what this means for your life. Not for diplomats, not for generals. For you. If the IRGC Military Council ratifies what General Shirazi agreed to, if all 7 generals say yes, here is what happens to your money. Oil drops. Analysts at Goldman Sachs have modeled a post-ceasefire Brent price of $68 to $72. That is a $30 fall from where we are now. In the UK, that translates to approximately 18 to 22 pence off a liter of petrol within 3 to 4 weeks. In America, gas prices fall back below $3 by May. Your energy bills, which spiked because gas-fired power stations are running on more expensive fuel, begin to normalize by June. Mortgage rates, which the Bank of England and the Federal Reserve have been holding high partly because of inflation driven by energy costs, could begin to fall. The Bank of England has signaled a rate cut is ready the moment oil stabilizes. The Fed has said the same thing. If you have a variable rate mortgage, if you have a personal loan, if you are paying off a car, the end of this war is worth hundreds of pounds or dollars to you this year. Not theoretically, numerically. And I want you to hold this word in your mind, but if the talks collapse, if the other 6 generals overrule Shirazi, if Israel lands one more strike that kills Iranian civilians in a way that makes backing down impossible, if Trump's deadline expires without a deal, then we go to the scenario I described in episode 16. $200 oil, ground troops. A global recession that every economist I have read in the last 2 weeks says would be worse than 2008. That is the fork in the road the world is standing at today. There is one more thing I need to tell you. One development that did not make the headlines, but that I think is the most important thing I am going to say in this episode. China's envoy at the Islamabad Talks was not a diplomat. He was a general. Major General Wei Fenghe, former Chinese defense minister, the man who personally oversaw China's last 3 military exercises around Taiwan, was in Islamabad. Not at the table, in a hotel 3 blocks away, and both the American delegation and the Iranian delegation went to see him separately. America went first. The message America gave China, according to a source familiar with the meeting, was simple. Help us end this, or we refocus entirely on the Pacific. China went back to the Iranians. The message China gave Iran was also simple. We will fund the reconstruction of Karg Island ourselves, directly if you sign this deal. Iran has never had that offer before. China will pay to rebuild what America destroyed. In exchange for Iran reopening the strait, stabilizing the oil price, and removing the American military's justification for staying in the Persian Gulf. That is not a ceasefire. That is a new world order being negotiated in a hotel 3 blocks from a conference room in Islamabad. And you heard it here first. Here is what I need you to do right now. Subscribe. Hit the bell. because the next 48 hours will determine whether this deal holds or collapses, and I will be here the moment it does. Leave a comment with one word that describes how you feel watching this unfold, and share this video with one person who is paying a mortgage, or a petrol bill, or an energy bill, because this is not geopolitics. This is their money, and they deserve to know. I am Geopolity. I will see you in the next episode.